Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Polyhedron Collidercast episode 151, sponsored by Yonder. I'm Steve Tudor.
I'm Andy Lewis.
I'm Sid Gill.
And I'm Rory Summers. Hello, chaps.
Hello.
Very formal there, very formal with Summers.
I said my name and I suddenly realised that I got to the point where I was like, we never discussed what our post-intro preamble was going to be. So I just...
So we're going to go with formal Britishness. Is that what we're starting with today, is it?
Good evening, gentlemen.
Let's use the force or something.
We usually start off by talking about the weather for 10 minutes, so it's very, very British.
That's true.
I haven't got much to say on it today,
really,
to be honest.
It's not really worth commenting on, other than it's a bit damp.
I think we should actually be talking about Sid's snacks, because he's got a cup of tea, and then what... And you're going to have to explain this, Sid.
Has he got a tiramisu?
I wish it was.
To me, hang on, before I go any further, to me in the screen, for our listeners, to me it looks like he's eating a Scotch Brite sponge, because it looks green. Oh, no, not the Scotch Brite sponge. That stuff that the florists use to stick flowers in.
Oh,
the green block.
What the hell's it called? Oasis.
Yeah, that's it.
It's nothing as exciting as any of those. Well, actually, it's more exciting than any of those, really.
It's a jelly and ice cream.
This is children's birthday cake.
Oh.
And it's made by Rob, as some of you guys know, for his daughter's birthday. And I've stolen a bit, and it's absolutely banging.
Super.
So I thought I'd have a bit more. This is my second bowl tonight with a cup of tea.
Second bowl, children's birthday. You're going to be bouncing off the walls because that's sugar.
I already know what's going to happen in this episode because I've seen the next 3 weeks.
Can you smell colours as well?
So we've been playing lots of games, lots and lots of games. Should we just jump in as a board game podcast? Should we start talking about board games?
You can all
ridiculous.
It won't catch on.
No. Not with us four anyway. It might not with everybody else, but not with us. Well, I have been, speaking of predicting the future, which we kind of need to do in this game. Remember on the top 100 list that Mr. Summers and Mr. Tudor have been getting their way through, and relatively recently they played Pandemic Legacy Season 1.
Indeed.
And I'm led to believe they rather enjoyed it.
We did. In fact, it was one of those games where we refused to put it away. We said, because we carried on the campaign me and you had started, Andy, like donkeys years ago, when we started this podcast, which shows how old it is. And then we decided we'd finish it as part of the top 100. And I think we had 4 months to do. I think so. We started in September, and that wasn't being packed away until we finished.
Yep.
It was you could tell once we started, that was it. We could not let it go off the table.
We had that when we played it the first time, didn't we? We really loved it until John got scared and we had to stop.
Yeah.
But he did. He got too stressed out.
We've lost Sid again.
You have to tell me, how did John get scared of Pandemic Legacy?
He got too stressed out because it is quite a high pressure game. To be fair, as weird as that may sound, it genuinely does get quite tense because does get especially when that deck starts to get quite low. You've still got 2 objectives to beat. Oh my god, have we got enough cards to do this?
Because it's a legacy game as well. That stresses even more because that badness, you can have a knock-on effect to your next game.
Yes, it does.
So, yes.
I am pleased to report that Pandemic Legacy Season 2 is just as tense. I have been playing... I've owned Pandemic Legacy Season 2 since, for at least 5 years, because I had it when I moved into my current home, which was 5.5 years ago. So let's say 6 years. It sat on my shelf of shame, unplayed, until Alora decided at this weekend that just gone, because we're recording on the Tuesday night, she said, right, let's play Pandemic Legacy Season 2. I'm like, that's a really good idea. Because no one else is going to come around and play it. Everyone else is too unreliable. Let's play it. Fine. Or at least, it's difficult to align calendars. Let's put it that way. So we thought, bugger it. Let's do it. So we did. And we have just finished May.
Wow.
Yes.
It's in one sitting, is that?
That's 2 sittings.
2 sittings, fair enough. But even so. Did it get packed away between sittings?
It's still out on my table right now. No, it's not getting packed away till we finished it. It is bloody brilliant. I can't obviously say too much for anyone who wants to actually play it, other than it is just as high pressure It's still got the fundamental pandemic, 4 actions, draw 2 cards, make the world worse, beats that you have in your turns. But the way the game works is actually surprisingly different. If I remember rightly, and correct me if I'm wrong, it's been about 8 years since we played Panda Leg 1. Panda Leg 1 was relatively linear, but as the story progressed, you kept doing missions, you found something, and you got the next chunk of story.
Generally, yes. Yeah.
Panda Leg 2 is quite open world, quite literally, in fact.
Okay.
I'm not going to spoil anything by telling you how you start. So obviously, you open the pack, you get the board out, and you're basically in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. And there are bits of the world that you can see, like the eastern seaboard of the US, some of Europe, and some of Africa and some of South America. And that's it. And there's basically 3 what they're called havens, basically sort of offshore rigs in the middle of the sea that you can kind of scoot between, as well as the ports on the land. And that's all you start with. So your missions are to explore. And there's no real wall in the way of you exploring almost in any direction. Now, it kind of nudges you in the right direction. I'm not going to say any more than that. And some of the objectives where you start sort of doing recon, basically, where you can explore more of the world. Some of them are harder to get, and some of them, in fact, impossible to get at the start of the game. But as you go through, more and more stuff gets opened, you get better abilities, so you can do more things, as in the first game. But also, you're encouraged to explore, to find new things, etc., etc. And it's really, really good. And it's still got that we want to play more aspect of it that Panda Leg 1 had. But it's still got the tear cubes up. It's still got the cubes up, tear cards up. It's still got the scratchy bits off. You can still put stickers on cards to give, certain locations or things, abilities when they come out. You can still upgrade your characters. So it's still got all of those beats from Panda Leg 1. But it's different enough that it's a completely separate experience and definitely worth playing.
Well, I think it is on our list of games to play.
Yeah, it was one of the ones we're thinking we will probably struggle with because it's a legacy game. But yes, it is in the BGT Top 100. So yeah,
is it? Oh well, okay.
Yes, it is currently ranked 55.
Well, there you go. You're probably going to have to buy another copy of it because I'm going to have spanked this by the time you get to it.
That's fair enough.
I don't see that one making the weekend, to be honest.
No, it won't, but it might.
I also noticed you did post a photograph, which you did a Tudor, as we called it, where you drew all the pandemic cards.
Yes! For the first 3 games, I drew every single one of them. And that is not an exaggeration. It's nuts.
I had to change my Facebook profile picture because that was my profile picture for some time. Me holding all the epidemic cards, and then COVID-19 hit, and I thought it was a bit in bad taste, so I changed it.
Panda Leg 2 kind of assumes that the world was humped at the end of Panda Leg 1. And it's set.
I think I would assume that anybody playing Panda Leg 1 is going to have the world humped.
Yes, yeah, pretty much is. But the Coda virus basically survived. You do draw on the map a lot more. You need a pen or a Sharpie, depending on what you do and where you go, because there's a lot more physical interaction with the game than there was in the first one.
Interesting.
And there are a lot more open world decisions you can make partly about how you draw on the map as well, about where you go and what you do and how you do it and how you go about it. So there are, as you've suggested, Steve, further long-term effects depending on how badly or how well you do. Because sometimes you might find, oh crap, we shouldn't have put that there because now we can't do this. Crap.
I do love that though. I love that, like, you did the best you could at that time.
Yes.
And then in hindsight, it was a really bad decision because of some knock-on effect that you couldn't anticipate. Just like real life,
Yeah, pretty much, yeah. It is genuinely like that. It's really, really good. Definitely worth playing. I can't remember how much I paid for it now, but we've played 5 months, so we've finished May. And we've won them all, I might add.
Well, you think you have.
It's got a
we
wrong.
have.
It's all going to go. It's all going to go to hell in a handbasket.
Yeah, it is. It's going south because the game does have this horrible. There's a couple of mechanics in it that obviously clearly rebalance the game. To say, well, you two are doing well, so I'm going to have you. But yeah, it's very enjoyable. Very enjoyable.
Talking of being on a boat in the middle of the ocean and then trying to kind of build up a civilization and settle somewhere, I think that's about as hamstrung a segue as I can get to talk about our next game.
I've got a list of games in front of me and I can't work out where you're going with this.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, it was a stretch. It was a stretch, but it will make sense shortly because I'm going to tell you now about Yonder from Sinister Fish Games, which is a fantastical worker placement game about establishing a new settlement for your fantastical immigrating denizens who are coming over on a boat to your area to resettle somewhere. It's got nothing to do with disease.
Although that was rife in those times.
But it was rife in the times of skeletons, ogres, goblins. It was the fantasy age. It was terrible, the plague.
I'm confused. Can you just explain it like I'm fine? I don't know where I'm going. I've got denizens, so it's like you've got the thesaurus out. I've got disease that was and wasn't there, and then we've got ogres and skeletons. What? What are you lot talking about?
Okay, right. So Yonder is a worker placement game where you're going to be building up your settlement, your village on a distant island. Okay? And you're going to be doing it with fantastical creatures. So your workers in this game are ogres and goblins and dwarves and elves and skeletons. You're going to send these, right? So a worker placement game. So you send your workers out to worker action spaces, you gain resources, you complete contracts, and pretty much, by and large, that is the game on paper. But as Steve and I has discovered, that Yonder is one of those games that once you get it on the table, once you've taken a few turns, you go, oh, that's a bit nasty. That's what Yonder is.
Interesting.
That's a nice succinct review. That is. I think that's. I think we can move on to the next game. Then
I was worried I'd sound a bit like a Bisto advert with that one, but it's. Yeah.
Is this another Hark and Gardner game because it's Sinister Fish, or is it not?
This is another Hark and Gardner game, although it is a significant step up in game type and complexity than Streets, Villages, and Moon. It's a much bigger beast. This is. And it functions completely differently to those games as well. This is like I say, on paper, this is a worker placement game. Place worker on spot, get resources, complete a contract. But then there's lots of clever things at work in here in this game, which Steve is nodding his head about like an excited puppy.
So, tell me more. Because if on paper it's as simple as it says, what makes it clever? What's the thing that's making you do the Bisto granny?
Right. There's lots of little things. And I think this is the kind of the brilliant, delicate part of this kind of gaming recipe here, is that Yonder has made lots of little clever changes. And all of these lots of little clever things have made a really refreshing, interesting, clever game. They've not just gone, we're going to change this big thing. We're going to make this big, significant change to how worker placement operates. There's lots of little things. So the first one, as I mentioned, all the workers are different species. And it's not that, Sid, you're playing as the goblins and I'm playing dwarves. No, we all have a share of these workers. But how they operate changes. So your ogres, they're so much bigger, so they can get twice as many resources when you send them off somewhere. Dwarves are really good at building, so they can build stuff for cheap. Skeletons are already dead, so at the end of the round, you don't need to feed any skeletons that are in your settlement, so they're free workers. Now, goblins are a bit runty. They're always, they're there.
Goblins are numerous.
Goblins are numerous. You always get loads of them, yeah.
Yeah, you always get two where you'd normally get one worker.
Yeah, and elves are really charming. So an elf can share a space with another worker. So if you've got an elf, you're never really stuck for somewhere to go. So that's clever thing number one. Clever thing number two is when we talk about the available action slots, it's not just on the main board. It's not just in my settlement, but it's in yours as well, Sid. And it's yours, Steve. So I can
hang on. You're coming across to my little piece of the table.
Yeah.
Yep.
And this
so you're getting in my grill with your workies.
Exactly. But
now that's different.
Yeah, and it adds a really nice piece of player interaction, which you don't normally get in these type of games. But I can place a worker into your settlement, fill up one of an action slot, just like any other time, get the resources, and at the end of the round, you either have to feed that worker or lose points.
Oh, hang on. Whoa, how? Just step back off the line here a minute. Hang on. You rock up in my bit of the board.
Yeah.
Put your chap down and basically rob me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dump your guy on my bit of the board, and then I have to catch him and feed him like some kind of prisoner of war.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what do I get for that?
That worker next round.
So if I place an ogre in your
Literally prisoner of war camp,
Yeah.
I'm putting this guy to work. I don't know how I feel about that.
Well, it's a weird mix because you have a limited number of workers each round. So each round you'll pick a boat. Is the way at the end of the round you pick a boat, and the boat has a special ability, and the boat determines what workers you start the next round with. And I think it's 3 workers unless there's goblins involved, in which case it'll be 4. And that's all you're going to start the round with. So if you send all your workers off to the main board and other people's boards, you're going to start the round with no workers, basically. You're going to start with the 3 you start with. So you want to put some workers in your own town to keep them back so you can use them next round. And you kind of half want people to come to you because you'll end up with more workers next round giving you more actions.
But you also don't want them to do that and fill up slots that you want to use yourself, because if Steve goes,
because you've spent time building these buildings that they're going to.
I've built this stone quarry because I need stone. So then I get really annoyed when you come along and you plonk an ogre in my stone quarry, taking 4 stone and then lumping me with a fecking ogre that I've got to feed at the end of the round.
So does an ogre need double food as well?
Yes, he does. So I get stiff for the bit. I don't get the resources that I've prepared for, that I've built my engine around, and I get stiff for the restaurant build for the ogre.
I mean, we've also missed out on the fundamental aspects of this game, which is stress-inducing, but also if you can get it to work, it's brilliant. So I mentioned boats. So the way the game works is every round you pick up a boat. So you have a starting boat, and at the end of every round you'll select a new boat, and that will give you your resources, and each boat has a special ability. And what you do is during the game you can pick up envoys, which are basically contracts. And to fulfill the contract you have to put one of the boats on the contract space and pay the resources. You'll get cash, which is victory points, and you will get some other resources as well. Nice and easy, yeah? Get contracts, fulfill contracts. Normal Eurogame stuff. You have to fulfill that contract every round.
For the rest of the game.
Oh.
Yeah. And if you don't ever fulfill it, you lose the contract and lose points.
And it's a sizable chunk of points as well.
Yeah.
But if I keep fulfilling it, do I keep getting rewarded?
You keep getting the points, and you keep getting the reward, yes.
So here you start building an engine. I've built the stone quarry, so I've got stone, so I can fulfill the contract on this stone one, so I can send stone off and it gets me some grain. But then the next envoy, the next contract I get, I want it to essentially coincide, so then I can use the grain from one to forward the next one, which will get me an elf, and then that elf will allow me to do something else. And you try and stack them and try and get this synergy in this engine going.
And then I arrive and put my ogre in your stone house and break your engine.
Completely banjacks my whole engine.
Oh boys, you're selling it. Yep, you make me want to play.
We played it with Amanda last night, and I thought Amanda was going to strangle Rory several times.
Well, if he's rocking up with ogres in her stone quarry, I don't blame her, frankly.
That's exactly what he did.
Yeah.
Because she was really upset that she'd made this engine, and then Rory just kept dumping dwarves and ogres into it.
Just going. It's also got, like, you've got a marker, so you've got the buildings, so you've got to try and get the right, as the buildings, the architects, the plans, so you could build those. You've got the envoys, so these are open contracts. So you're trying to get the good one, the one that really works for you. And then you want to also get the good boat, which has the good allotment of workers, because you've got to manage your worker pool. Because as Steve said, if there's none in your settlement at the end of the round, great, you've got no food bill to pay. but you've not got any leftover workers. You're only going to get those 4 that you get from the boats. This is...
I should also add as well, sorry, this is like the main mechanics. Those buildings completely mix up the game as well. So, to give an example, last time we played, Rory did not deliver contracts.
For the whole of the first round
for the whole
and
of the game.
half? Yeah.
Even then, you only did like 2 or 3 because he'd worked out an engine with his buildings, because some of the end game buildings give you victory points as well. So he'd worked out an engine which he could do to build that. We played a game with Adam where Adam had worked out a little engine where he could basically just recruit as many goblins, and then the goblins gave him gold, and those gold were worth victory points every round, and he was ratcheting up this every round as well. So there's lots of little tiny strategies in there that are hidden depending on what cards come out.
Yeah.
Because the cards might not be feasible on their own, but you might go, well, hang on, that's the card which uses goblins, and that envoy delivers goblins as a bonus. So I need to get both of them coming out at the same time. It's really quite clever.
It's really
So
clever.
it sounds like a... Sorry.
No, carry on. No, I was just going to say there's loads of ways to score points in this game.
Well, that's kind of what I was going to ask. Is it sounds like a game where everybody's kind of... You can almost optimize your own little game, and you're kind of playing your own little kind of
as we said
optimization
before,
game.
You are until someone plants a freaking ogre on your cornfield, which your entire engine relies on.
Yeah, I can see how that could be frustrating.
So you need to make sure there's contingency in that engine.
But I like that. I like the fact that you've got a big-ish plan that you're working towards, but then you've got a couple of little variations or little duck and dives to accommodate people rocking up and screwing your board up.
Yeah, of course, because you've got the main board as well. So you've got all of these slots on. So it's very rare that you can't ever do some of what you want to do. Like my quarry in my settlement is better than the quarry that's on the board, but I can still go to the one on the board. And there's a space where I can go and swap resources, and I can swap resources for Arcana, and Arcana unlocks a new little section of the board which gives me other bonuses. There's always ways to pivot in this game. You might not always be pivoting in the way you want to because someone's taken your envoy or taken your boat or done something, but you can maneuver around it.
Andy, was it you said you'd played this at Expo, or did you say Alora played it?
Alora had.
Yeah,
she wasn't that impressed by it. But she had only played a short demo of it.
Yeah, now we think the demo was only the first round or maybe the first 2.
Right.
And I do wonder whether that wasn't really enough to show off all this craziness that we're talking about.
I think it's the type of game that a demo really should be. You're in round 3. These are the buildings you have. These are the envoy. You start mid-game. And you get to see how some of this stuff works. I think that's how a demo should be. Because, I know people that had a demo of this game and weren't overly enamoured. But it took me about maybe 3 minutes of playing this game to really just go, ooh, that is good. And then Steve did it and Adam did it, and we were all finding aspects of this game that really resonated with us. It's really clever. And it escalates over the course of the game. We were really surprised. We thought we were going to get a game of Yonder in and something else that first time we played it. Not a chance. It took us all night to play it. It took us as long to play Yonder. It took us longer to play Yonder than it did to play the Gallerist that we'd played the week before.
Whoa, really? Jesus.
Yes.
Yeah, the same 3 players. And Yonder's a really easy teach.
Yeah.
But the complexities in that game, and sometimes there are turns where I'm just like, I need a minute to think because I need to plan 3 turns in advance. I need to do, and it's that typical work of what action do I absolutely need to do so my engine works?
So
I need to do 3 of them first. Yeah. Say again, mate.
There's a lot of AP in this then.
Not any more than any other heavy Euro.
Okay.
I mean, we mentioned the Gallerist. I wouldn't say there was more AP than the Gallerist.
No.
It's bizarre because the Gallerist has a higher rules overhead to make those decisions, whereas this had very straightforward rules, yet still had a lot of depth of decision because of all the myriad of options you could do, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
and it feels very weird comparing these two, Gallerist and Yonder, because they do not look even remotely similar. But yeah, I mean, it's going to be prone to AP for people who are going to have trouble with AP and difficult decisions anyway because of the myriad of options, especially when you realise, shit, I can't fulfil that envoy. What am I going to do? What can I do to fulfil this envoy? What's left?
Yeah, you have to be able to think down that chain of actions.
Okay.
To do well at this game.
When we played it, we never thought it was stopping us from playing, if that made sense, the AP. And it did feel similar to most heavy Euros, which is bizarre because it's not a heavy game. It feels like it's a medium weight game, but with a good depth of decision.
That's not a bad thing.
Yeah, no, it's not. I think it's a good seller, yeah.
Very
we do
satisfying.
Like rules like heavy think kind of game. So, yeah, teach it in 5 minutes, takes 5 hours to play. Excellent. Okay. Well, I shall have to try it.
And the worker tokens are very cute.
It's a very attractive looking game, isn't it? Harkins has done all the artwork again. It's a very bright, and I think it's almost to its detriment, really, is that this game does not look like the type of game it really is. It looks a lot lighter because it's so bubbly and cute.
Sure.
If it was a bit more, if it had artwork more akin to something like Lords of Waterdeep, you'd go right. This is a serious worker placement game.
What you're saying is it needs more beige.
No, God no. I love the way it looks on the table, but it is deceptive.
Sure, well, that's always good. Trips you up and face plants you in some mud. Nice.
I would like to mention one thing before we finish because we should wrap this up soon.
Yeah.
Is the meat grinder, which is personally my favourite building in any worker placement game ever.
Really?
I just thought it was hilarious. So there is a building you can get in which you feed a non-skeleton worker to, and you get out a skeleton and a meat resource.
Nice. That's outstanding.
Do you think that was good? I really like the elf swingers.
Yes.
The elf swingers card was brilliant as well.
Do they come with some pampas grass?
I think it might be on the artwork, yeah.
That's outstanding.
There's some very tongue-in-cheek cards on
They're
this.
brilliant.
And a couple of contracts. You read the contract and it just goes, oh yeah, I've got to do this and do this. And then you go, oh, hang on, what are they doing with that resource? And it's never obvious. It's all quite subtle. So anyway, Yonder is on Kickstarter as of the recording, which is Tuesday. So by the time this podcast comes out, it'll have been out for nearly a week, but it's on for 30 days. So it will be on for about another 3 weeks when you listen to this podcast.
Strongly recommend you check this game out. If you're interested, if you like your worker placement games, this is a really nice, refreshing, interesting twist. It is potentially nasty though. So if you don't like conflict in your games, then be wary that there is conflict in this game.
I think our listeners should also check something else out.
What's that?
I think they need to be directed towards the socials, upon which I was pointed out to a very sexy looking chap talking about this game.
Really?
Nigel Havers and Take a Break sprung to mind.
Thank you, Sid.
That's all I will say on it.
Never make a gingerman blush. I've told you this.
I can't tell the difference between your face and your beard anymore, mate.
He's turned very deep crimson.
Mate,
I've just been a bit sick in my mouth, to be honest.
He's a magnificently sexy bastard in that video, mate, I tell you.
Okay.
Oh, it was me hoping you're going to put this on some Kickstarter I hadn't seen, but I was not expecting that, Sid.
Well, actually, while we're on that subject, I have recently, I suppose definitely backed, because on Back a Kick, currently live, I don't know for how long for, is the Trickerion role-playing game.
No,
yes.
I was intrigued by that. I thought, what?
Yeah. Well, I've succumbed to curiosity quite heavily. As I often do. So I've actually gone for it and backed it. So I think it's still open at the moment. They're just an email, as we'd be called now, has just hit saying there's a couple of add-ons that they've chucked in as well. So I assume this is going to go for a few more days. I could try and find out whilst we amble through.
9 days left.
9 days. So if you're lucky and Steve gets his thumb out of his arse and produces this by the weekend, there might be a few days left by the time you hear this. Or not. But There may be late pledges. I'm sure there probably will be, but even then, it'll be, I'm sure, probably available, to pre-order and stuff.
I would have thought the late pledges. I think that's one of the things of back a kit.
Exactly.
Game Found, isn't it? They're all set up for that.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So have you gone physical or just PDF, Mr. Lewis?
Both.
Right. Okay. So
I've gone full Olivia Newton-John. I've gone physical.
There's a man showing his age right there, isn't there? Half the listeners won't even know who that is.
I struggle to keep up with that reference, to be honest.
Oh, good grief. The only reason I know that is because on Friday night, I had a few friends over to watch Top Secret, which is Val Kilmer's. You remember Naked Gun and Airplane and stuff done by the Zucker and what's his chops? It's that kind of humour.
Is
Val
that
Kilmer
the one
playing
with
a
the French guy
yeah,
with chocolat mousse?
That's it, chocolate mousse.
La chocolat mousse.
Deja vu. And yes. This is latrine. Yeah, that one.
That one.
But after that, we had a bit of a YouTube session, and for some reason, Laura put Olivia Newton-John on, so that's the only reason it's fresh in my mind.
Because Laura really likes that song, because I remember she put it on at New Year's Eve, and I hadn't seen that video in like 30, maybe even 35 years.
Song. It's a good song.
That's a good song. But yes, so it's fresh in my... That's why. Anyway, so that's a slight rabbit hole there. But yes, now that's on, and it is basically the RPG set in the Trickerion board gaming universe. So with Dalgard's Academy and all that lot. So you play as some kind of mystic, and the characters from the board game are used in the RPG. And as far as I can tell, it's scenario-based. So as part as the campaign goes on, you get more sort of pre-baked scenarios that they'll release as you go along. But they've also literally, just as an add-on now, you can kind of create your own. So they've given you little books and stuff to help you do that. So it does look quite interesting. And as I do love Trickerion, it's a very, very clever game. Bloody heavy, I'm not going to lie. It ain't for the faint-hearted. This is one of these, there's a lot going on and it's quite difficult kind of games.
I remember playing Trickerion a while ago, and it's also one of those games where every section of the board has a different set of rules. Just
Pretty
to
much,
make things,
It's right. What can we throw at the wall and what sticks?
Yes.
It's not that similar to Android, actually, in that sense.
True, very true.
So yes, how do you explain Trickerion? Well, it's a programming game, except there's a bit of dice placement, and then there's a bit of resource management, and then there's some path building. So yeah, there's tons in it. It's really it's a clever game, but it's not for the faint-hearted. But yes, so it's all set in the Trickerion universe, and yeah, I'm just sort of doing it out of curiosity more than anything else. Obviously, as we do like a good RPG, I thought I'd mention it because it does look interestingly different, or differently interesting. I don't know.
Well, Andy, you set me up there.
There you go. You say I've done you a favour.
Trickerion, it's a board game and RPG set in the same universe. Now, we have played some board games and RPGs which are not set in the same universe but are influenced by the same works. So lately we have been playing the board game Cthulhu with Death May Die and the RPG Achtung Cthulhu. Now what I'm going to do, listener, is we'll talk about the board game first because I know not everyone is an RPG fan. So you'll know that when we get to the RPG discussion, you can skip to the end if that's not your thing, because
skip to the end.
Yeah, skip to the end.
So bucket on your head and hit it with a spoon, that kind of thing. So did you play this with the full Maxature?
I do not own the Maxature. No. So this is a copy of the base game retail version, which was provided by our sponsor Yonder. Which, by the way, if you fancy buying yourself a board game, which, let's be fair, if you're listening to this podcast, you definitely are going to be buying a board game at some point in your future, then we recommend you head over to Kenda and use our link, which is in the show notes and all over our socials, which will get you a discount off that purchase. Quite a good shop, loads in stock. We are constantly keeping an eye on it, so there's loads of things out there, and their sales are quite good at the moment, I believe, Rory, because you were tempted to buy a few things.
I may have several things in my cart.
Yes. So, Cthulhu Death May Die is a CMON, miniatures-heavy, cooperative, scenario-based game. And I think this is one of the most Ameritrashy of Ameritrash games I've played in an absolute long time. Now, okay, so we haven't got the huge miniature. because that was a Kickstarter thing. But we have got a Cthulhu and a King in Yellow model, both of which are about 10 centimetres.
Oh, nice.
So,
Wow,
and they're really nice sculpts. This is like one of the more modern games by Simon. So Simon sculpts were always good and their miniatures were always good. They've just improved with time. So these are really nice sculpts for everything. It is scenario-based. Now, weirdly, it's season-based. So what they've done is each box of this game, I think, can be played completely independently. So you can get a box which says season on it and just get out and play. And what inside there, you have a series of episodes, which I think is confusing calling them season and episodes, because you don't have to play them in order. They don't link in any way. They're just a scenario. Now, where this game really, I think, is one of the clever things, TM, about it, is you grab one of these cassettes, effectively. It's a little box which has all the rules in for that scenario, and then you choose your big bad. So with the game come the King in Yellow and Cthulhu, but expansions and other season boxes have other big bads. So every time you do a scenario, you mix and match these. Okay. So the scenario will have some baddies in it, and your big bad will have some baddies in it. So potentially every time you play, you can mix it up. I think there's 6 episodes in the core box. So potentially there's 12 variations straight there. You can add more expansion to it. We just mentioned about Rory's shopping bag in Yonder. I did notice the Black Goat in the Woods was one of the options. So I could mix that in and make that into 18 scenarios. Each one is very much mission-based, so I don't want to spoil things again, like you said with Andy with Pandemic, but the first one involves trying to put out fires. While this is happening, you will have a goal which you have to do to disrupt the ritual. So the evil cultists are doing the ritual to summon the big bad, your normal Call of Cthulhu stuff, and you have to disrupt it, and you have to do X things to disrupt the ritual. You usually have to do the same action several times, and each scenario will have a different action you have to do. As the game goes on, you get at the end of each round, you get your Mythos cards kind of thing. They will advance the ritual. Once the ritual hits a certain point, the big bad comes on the board, and you have to then complete disrupting the ritual and then kick the big bad's arse, which is usually really difficult because they're a hit point sponge. They've usually got like 12, 14 hit points.
Well, they have multiple health bars.
They're like a Dark Souls video game boss. They've got multi-phases. So you'll reveal one phase and the next phase is more bloody powerful. Gameplay is pretty straightforward. Number of actions each round. Move, attack, any actions on your card. Anything that's attack or a skill card involves rolling dice. Success is successes. Madness is madness. But what is interesting is the madness, as the madness track goes up, that allows you to unlock better abilities. So you don't get experience points and level up. You get madness, which is random, but the further you go along the madness track, you can die from too much madness. By the end of the game, you're rolling handfuls of dice, which tells you the kind of game it is. And I think that's really all you can say about it, because it's not a particularly deep game.
No.
Now, interestingly, it is Eric Lang and Rob Davio, so the makers of Pandemic Legacy. Bizarrely, it doesn't feel like one of their games. I think for what the kind of game it is, it's like almost like a Zombicide Plus. So it's got that miniatures crawling around the board, but the scenarios are really where the depth comes from and then what make it interesting. So if the scenario feels like a bit of a dud, it makes the entire game feel like a bit of a dud. But it also is one of these games as well where if you're not on top of things, I wouldn't say it ramps up the difficulty, it completely throws you down a bloody coal chute into the difficulty. Yeah. You've got like 20 minutes on the board and you can't move through a space because Cthulhu kicks your ass kind of thing. Which literally. Is common, quite literally, which is common to this kind of game. So there is an element of if you don't do well enough early on, you really have to be lucky to complete it, if that makes sense. So there's an element of sticking to what the scenario says. But I don't think this is a game you should overthink. It's got bright, colourful miniatures. It's got handfuls of dice. It's got big miniatures with monsters that come on the board and cultists and fire and mystical spells. I think it works really well for what it is, and I remembered playing this. I haven't played this kind of game in donkey's years. I've gone so far down the Euro game kind of route that it's been a long time since I've played like a proper just throw buckets of dice around. And I think this almost feels like the blockbuster film to the Oscar bait. So
do you know what this is? Shall I tell you what this is? And I've thought about this after we played on my way home.
Yeah.
This is like watching Sharknado after watching Titanic. Right?
Yeah.
So one epic cinematic masterpiece that is frankly shit, but critically it's a fantastic film. Right?
So Titanic then.
That's what I'm talking about. Sharknado, on the other hand, is utter dog shit. Right? It's a film that shouldn't exist. Right? But it's magnificent because what it does is it helps you move your mind into a different place. And where it moves you is somewhere of fun, of just getting immersed in the Cthulhu nonsense, accepting that your character is guaranteed to either go mad or die. You're never going to win, and when you do win, it's one of the most amazing feelings in the world that I think I've felt maybe once in my entire time of playing games like this. Because normally the game wins.
Yeah.
But
it's hard.
It is hard. But tell you what, when it does, when you get it right, when suddenly you because it's a co-op, so you can play off each other, you can string your actions together, try and work out the most efficient. Oh, I'll go there. No, you go there first, and you do that. And I've got this ability that means I can pull one of you along with me, and you're trying to work it out. You're trying to efficiently move your pieces around, and then a cultist appears in the room and completely screws your entire turn up. I just love it.
The three of us played it, and we had some great cooperation, I thought, and we did quite well in that game, and we started losing control and were wrestling to keep it back. And it was really, if I remember correctly, when the three of us played, we won, and we won on the last turn. I think it was my character unloaded a shotgun into Cthulhu and killed him.
Yeah, I think I was dead in a corner somewhere.
You were dead in the corner. I think Steve's character was a gibbering wreck in a different corner. And in my last turn, I just walked up to Cthulhu and unloaded a shotgun and killed him.
Yeah,
and it was a really, really dramatic end to the game.
Yeah, it's a game where your decisions matter, and that's what I think makes it really work. Is that no decision is a good one. They're just the best of a bad bunch. You're trying to pick the one that least screws you in the arse. And I mean, it makes me smile. Look at us, three of us around the table now are grinning ear to ear, just thinking about it.
I'm grinning at how you're waxing so lyrical about this utter boring turd of a game.
No, you don't like it. I know you don't like it.
I sat through and watched the England game the other day, and that England game was more interesting than that game.
Whoa, really?
Yeah, right.
Jesus, that game was shite.
All right, now you're the man that says Sharknado's crap, so your opinion is now no longer relevant in this conversation.
I just found Cthulhu Death May Die to be very random, very... It wasn't silly. It was just it felt kind of nonsensical.
Yes, absolutely is, Rory. That's exactly what it is. You hit it on the head.
But it's like I want there to be some sense. I want there to be a reason for me to do the things.
What do you want? Celine Dion on the front of the Titanic with Kate Winslet, mate? I mean, come on. I want sharks falling out of the sky, eating people in a tornado. I mean, what is wrong with you?
It just very much like, all right, I'm here in this corridor. What are we going to do? Well, we need to go and get that thing, and we need to go and we need to kill that guy. So I was like, well, I guess I'll move here and shoot this guy. It felt like most turns of the game, everything I was going to do was quite prescribed. Like you say, it's a choices about what's going to screw you in the arse least. It was like, well, really, I'm only ever going to do this action. I'm only ever going to do these things. And I felt like a lot of my fate was just, I'm going to pick up these dice, I'm going to roll them, and oh look, it was a bad roll, so bad stuff is going to happen to me. Or it's a good roll, and that's okay. it just felt there was so little. I felt like the choices I had were quite meaningless, and there was an awful lot of randomness that I couldn't mitigate or do anything with.
I'd like the listeners, the long-term listeners, to cast their mind back to us talking about Aliens, Colonial Marines.
Yes.
Glorious Day in the Core.
Ah.
Which Rory absolutely hated.
Oh, I didn't like that one.
And by adding 2 and 2 together, this is not your kind of game, Rory,
No, it's
at
not.
all.
It's not.
And I think, I don't think it's even worth you saying it, because your complaints you're saying now were exactly the same complaints you made about Glorious Day in the Core.
Tell it, guys. I'm going to go make a cup of tea. The game's rubbish. I'll be back in 10.
When did you play Glorious Day in the Core then? Have you got, did you got that as well, Steve? Or did you
Yes, no, I've got it, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Don't you remember? I showed you like me gluing all the aliens together, and you pointed out glued the feet back.
That's right. And I said, pro tip: wait for the glue to dry a bit before you do the tails. Or did you tell me that? I can't remember.
I can't remember. Yeah, I remember like having lots of things underneath the tails to try and keep them in line.
That's right,
but yes, I remember Rory getting very frustrated.
I did. But
Do you know what? Rory's not wrong. You're not. The weird thing, right, is I do agree with everything you said. I just don't care. and do you know why I don't? You know why I don't care? Because of exactly what I said earlier about it. For me, and this is me, puts my brain in exactly the place I want it to be, and it left me with fun. I just enjoyed my time with it. And you're right. If I was to sit there and not enjoy that setting or enjoy that flavor of game, then I'm going to be finding the things that you said, because they're there. Everything you've said is true. Yeah. And I think half of this game is really the people that you've got around the table. If you've got people that want to kind of embody their character, they pick up the character, they start adding a little bit of color, a little bit of flavor to what they're doing, and just make a bit of nonsense out of it, then it plays differently. But if you just played it mechanically, and you would chuck it in the
and
bin.
I think I leaned to your former there. I did try and play it in character and do the stuff.
You did,
because I think my character was anxious, so I couldn't go too far away from your character, and it was fun for that. But for me, I think if I wanted to shift my brain out of playing like a heavy Euro, and I just wanted a lighter bit of brain space, there are a huge array of games that I've got that are lighter, that will change the mood, that will change the tone, that would still give me some satisfaction. I think that's what I lacked with Cthulhu Death May Die. I felt that my choices didn't have any weight, and I lacked any satisfaction for when an outcome went in my favour.
And for those exact reasons, it's why I loved it.
And
so we split the table. We split the table, haven't we?
It's fine.
That's okay. That's all right.
Now, the game which this is going to be compared to is the other big Cthulhu game involving miniatures and going around the board and rolling dice. A game which me and Andy picked as the game of the year when it came out.
Yes.
Which would be Mansions of Madness. And I know both of you have played Mansions of Madness, and I'd like to know your comparisons, because you've both mentioned to me separately what your comparisons between Cthulhu Death May Die and Mansions of Madness are. And I'd like to hear this discussion.
Furnish me with your brains.
See, the first thing that's really key difference between Mansions of Madness and Cthulhu Death May Die is that Mansions of Madness is actually an interesting game.
No, they're both the same. They're both the same game. There's nothing different. I don't get it. I don't understand it. There's no app, is there?
No. Yeah.
Right?
So this is it. On paper, we were saying the paper, the Yonder thing on paper. On paper, Mansions of Madness and Cthulhu Death May Die are the same game. It's a miniature-based, Cthulhu-based, co-op-based game in which you're fighting the minions.
Because Mansions of Madness had this much more open world exploration thing going on. The fact that we couldn't see the map. So you're here, we're in this room, where do we go? Oh, there's a thing over there to look at, there's a thing over there to go check. There's a thing over there we can go and explore and see around the corner. So part of the game is you are unfurling this story. There's a drunk guy in the alley. Oh, there's a little boy in the window. Those are things that you uncover which adds to the story, which adds to drama. So although fundamentally you're still rolling dice, you're still taking limited actions, and those mechanically it's very same, but the way those elements are introduced to you is done in a far more narrative and a far more interesting way. Whereas Cthulhu Death May Die, everything's out on the table in front of you, and it's just like, go and get the 4 books. There's one here, one there, one there, one here. This one's protected by this great big gribbly. These ones protected by all these cultists and all this fire. So you automatically go straight into game mode of going, how do I do this? How do I solve the problem? As opposed to, where is the problem? Let's go find out what to do.
You are right. I mean, again, I can't disagree with anything you're saying. You are correct. There is more intrigue. There's, flipping the clue tokens, and you rock up in a room. You've got some things you don't know.
Yeah,
absolutely correct. You're right there, and I think Mansions is better at that. But I don't think it's a better game. I think that part of it makes it less repeatable to me. Mansions, when you've played the scenario, you know where those bits and pieces are generally.
No, you don't. No,
well, it randomizes it. They move around, but you know what the scenario is. But then Cthulhu Death May Die has got the same problem, that the scenario is, but it's not hiding that. It's not hiding the fact that it's the same scenario with a different bad guy. It's more honest in that regard, right? Mansions isn't. Mansions, I really like Mansions. I think it's an excellent game. But I think it's trudgy. It becomes monotonous. Halfway through the game, I'm annoyed with the app. It frustrates me because it's not moving at the pace I want to move at. And sometimes I want to move fast, sometimes I want to move slow. And sometimes I just want to, and Cthulhu Death May Die, I felt more empowered to play the game at my pace, not at the app pace. That changes it for me.
Yeah.
I think part of the fun of Mansions, though, is that you are under pressure the entire time. You can't take your time because the tension is growing, and that's part of the point of it. The more you fanny about, the more you're going to get a whacking great gribbly jumping through the window to eat you.
Yeah. No, I think you're right. But Cthulhu's Death May Die is the same.
It's the same,
it's still
but
got
you
a
can
clock.
see it building, can't you? You can see that tension because the Mythos cards, you've got this great big whopping miniature that sits to one side on this track, and it needs to move, I think, up to like space 5. Once it moves to space 5, it comes onto the board. But you can see it progressing because every time you draw a Mythos card, you lay them down, and you're meant to lay them all where you can see them. And essentially, once you've got 3 of the same like chevrons that form like a pattern, you move the miniature. So I think Sid really beautifully put, mate, actually, was that Cthulhu Death May Die is more honest about how it's giving you that information. It's more honest about the game you're about to play, whereas Mansions of Madness keeps it all hidden and spoon feeds you it, which you have to do with an app as well, and I do have my frustrations with the app.
We're actually arguing over 2 magnificent games, really. If we're brutally honest, we're trying to be overly critical about 2 games.
That's not the argument we're having, Sid.
It's the argument I'm taking away from it.
That's the way I take it as well, Sid. Anyway, I think we should move on. So that was Cthulhu Death May Die by Simon. Yes, as you can hear, opinions are mixed on this game.
I think this is one that's going to have to warrant a poll. I think I reckon this is poll worthy because I know I'm right, and I need listeners to ratify me being right. And then we'll all agree that Rory's wrong after that.
But you just said that you said that you agreed with everything I said.
I say a lot of things, mate. Doesn't mean I'm right, right? That was a moment of weakness. That was a moment of unnecessary honesty in the middle of a rant. Right? That's all that was.
Okay, right.
While we're on the subject of supernatural horror, I'd like to interject with something that you might all find quite interesting. It's not a board game, but if you remember, I introduced you all, or maybe to some of the listeners, I think a couple of you had heard it before, to the that sort of Cthulhu podcast thingamajig that we all listened to a while ago that I can't remember the name of.
Lovecraft Investigations.
Lovecraft, that one. Well, turns out I have found, or I've been introduced to, I think either via Alora or via one of our friends, to another podcast. It's not Cthulhu necessarily, but it is called Undertow: The Harrowing, and it is an 8-part, I think, currently podcast about Sergeant Jackie O'Hara in the Scottish Highlands. Basically, going to not quite Tyne-Hoolishted, but not far off it, some outer Hebridean island where bad shit's going down. And we've listened to the first 2 episodes so far, and I have to say it's very good. It's very gripping, very environmental. The only downside is that for some reason, even though we've got a full subscription to Spotify, it seems to be chucking adverts in about halfway through the episode, which really breaks the mood. You're listening to, and the weather's crashing in, there's some kind of spooky music. Oh my God, you hear a door creak. Oh no, brand light spark plugs. The only spark plugs for you. What? What's going on? No! And it rips you straight out of that environment. But if you can get a sort of a non-advert version of it. It's called Undertow: The Harrowing. It is on Spotify, and I don't know if it's on other platforms. It might well be.
Most podcasts are available on most platforms. Yeah. Yes, it's currently on Apple. Yeah.
Yeah, but it is thus far 2 episodes very, very, very gripping, and I'm quite enjoying it. I don't think it's Cthulhu, but it's not far off as far as it feels.
Interesting. Right, well, I shall add that to my list. Right then, let's round up with a bit of RPG talk then. So we were also sent the Achtung Cthulhu RPG from Modiphius. Kindly sent us a PDF of this, and this is the starter set. So this is a complete set to get you into the retro pulp world of kicking Nazis in the tentacles. So for those who don't know, Achtung Cthulhu was originally an add-on for Call of Cthulhu RPG, now released under Modiphius' own 2D20 system, and it's a game in which you form a ragtag band of allied troops, and you go up against for all intents and purposes, it's Hydra really, isn't it? From the Marvel films. Yeah, so it's Hydra, but rather than like using the what's it called, like powers of the cubes, they're trying to raise Cthulhu and shit like that. I mean, there's more than that as well. There's also another part of the German army that's using weird alien technology, and there's a couple of other factors in there. But this starter set is set around the events of Dunkirk, and you are to wonder why these bizarre troops are in the area and investigate and carry on. Now, again, we won't spoil it. It's an RPG, it's a setting, but it goes to a very bonkers place. Would you agree with that, Sid, that the final of that game was a bit bonkers?
Well, I mean, right, the whole game is nonsense, right? I mean, we talk about the Death May Die being complete nonsense, right? But Achtung Cthulhu is a setting where it doesn't make sense. It shouldn't be fascinating and interesting, right? It's like Indiana Jones crashed into sort of like a proper Cthulhu-esque madness, right? But it's fantastic. It's absolutely bonkers. The whole concept is bonkers. You know, soldiers that wear gas masks because they're zombie-type soldiers and, you know, stuff like that. And at the end, there was spaceship. It's like Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of Crystal Skull when there's an alien spaceship and for no real reason and we're all upset. Why is there an alien spaceship? I mean, all right, we could accept the Ark of the Covenant. That was all right, but spaceships, that's too much, right? It's all of that. It's all of that. It's absolutely bonkers. And you know what? I love it. I think I've said it before on the show. I think Achtung Cthulhu is one of the most interesting and bizarrely complex worlds that I've played an RPG in because it's so like ours yet so different.
Really?
And it's you can really relate to it because you're not superheroes. You are people. You're just people that have seen weird shit, and your characters start off generally pretty normal in Achtung Cthulhu. You know, you're pretty basic kind of. You know, you can punch and you can shoot, and that's it. You might have somebody that's had some kind of experience of the mythos and stuff like that. But it's like it's Cthulhu-esque in that you your characters kind of flesh out and become more and more powerful as you grow them if they survive. Half the time you don't actually survive, so you never really grow through them. But it's I find it really relatable because it's like, it's a French setting, a French village or something that you're playing in, or you're in the beaches of Dunkirk or something. So it's not like relatable in the sense that we were there, but it's still
a real location, and it's a real point in time that you're basing everything else on. Okay.
And they've picked, and the fact that they've put the baddies into what is generally considered a very bad bunch of people, and making them even worse is it's just really neat, and it makes for a fun environment to play in, and a world that is really rich in its complexity, yet it's really simple to get into, which I think is what's really clever about Achtung Cthulhu.
To reference what Sid just said, there is even a point in this starter set scenario where you actually feel sorry for the German army.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and it's a surprising little thing where you go, oh, all right, okay, wasn't expecting that to happen.
And it's because what we all assume to be the big bad isn't necessarily the big bad that we thought. And actually, it humanizes a lot of stuff like that, which is really clever. Really, really clever thing. But then it throws in
and
this...
And then goes batshit crazy.
Yeah, then it goes mental. Then it throws in the whole Marvel twist of just absolute pulp nonsense. Like, at one point, we had to check ourselves playing this game, going, guys, we're overthinking this. Right? We were stood there before we went into a camp or something like that, and we're thinking, right, better wear the right disguise. This disguise has got bullet holes. We can't possibly wear a bullet hole jacket. And we're like, hang on a minute. If we were the Avengers, would we be sat here going, I can't possibly wear that suit. That's got a little bit of gravy down it. No, we would just rock up and do a superhero landing and, shoot a couple of Nazis. And as soon as it makes you want
gravy on your lapels.
Well, to be fair, that was actually a turning point in the entire little mini campaign we played, where they went from being, let's just call it the classic D&D group where you spend 2 hours looking at a door where it's like, just try the freaking door handle, and they're going, how do we sneak in, to them suddenly going, hang on, this is a pulp game. What would Indiana Jones do? Yeah. What would the Avengers do? To the point where one of the players put Rammstein on in the background, blared it through the speakers, and went, I jump on top of the tank and use my flamethrower.
Nice.
And after that, it was just like plain sailing. We went, right, that's how we need to play this game. And it worked because the rules just fell straight into place at that point. None of this screwing around. No, let's set fire to the entire German camp while riding on a tank out of the base with Feuerfreich, or whatever it's called, blaring in the background. Absolutely genius.
Whilst riding a tiger made of lightning.
It is exactly that. That is exactly what it is. It is stupid. It's absolutely stupid.
And it wasn't until we embraced that the game really came alive. We went, right, this is how we're supposed to play it.
Turn it up to 11.
Yes.
Right.
And I think that's what's refreshing about Achtung Cthulhu, actually, in general, is it is very different. It makes you change how you play. And that, I think, is the most challenging thing of the actual game. The rules are easy. The 2D20 system is simple to get your brain around. Your characters aren't particularly complicated, and magic is not that hard, right? It's actually just going, I've got to play this game differently. I have to steal a tank in broad daylight, with a German standing there talking to his mate, and I've got to hit him with a shoe. Do you know what? You've got to embrace the madness in this game. And when you do...
It sounds like you've got to embrace that pulpy actionness.
Yeah. And if you don't, then you just get a very dry, confused experience.
See, this to me sounds like it'd be a lot of fun, but it sounds so different to the types of RPGs that I have played. I think I would struggle to get into that mindset. I think I'd need to be almost led by someone doing that.
But this was it. As soon as someone said, screw it, I'm jumping on top and using the flamethrower, that's it. Because that sequence of events got things going.
Yeah.
And then all the players went, right, okay, this is what we need to do.
Yeah.
And off you go.
In terms of the starter set specifically, that I think it did bring you along that journey and help you realise that with the kind of scenarios it set up. It let you mess it up quite simply early on and gave you a few opportunities to change your ways. And it was about halfway we actually had that revelation, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was about halfway.
And so I think for somebody like yourself, Rory, as you just said, if you were wanting a bit of a handhold through it, then I think it's probably quite a good way to get into it.
My other question with this is, as someone that's not terribly au fait with the Lovecraftian Cthulhu stuff, how accessible is it if I've kind of not got any prior knowledge to that?
For me, really, really accessible, because most of that is hidden behind a Nazi swastika.
Okay.
Yeah, a lot of what they're doing is that same kind of thing. There's ritual. There's often a ritual happening somewhere that they're trying to bring somebody through a gate, or Necronomicons, or some nonsensy term will be thrown around. There'll be a MacGuffin for the sake of argument. Yeah, that's more or less what you're doing. And actually, most of what I think Cthulhu is trying to do is make you smile. It's trying to give you the opportunity to be silly with your RPG. I think. I mean, somebody's going to come out and tell me you've got that completely wrong, Sid. But for me, that's what it does. Is it? I don't think a long campaign is going to be as interesting, and we haven't done one yet, but we've talked a lot about it. I think a long campaign would be too draining. I think it's too hard to keep that intensity and pace that this game really needs going.
Do you think it suffers from a similar sort of problem that Tales from the Loop suffers? That it's all very well having this lovely 80s nostalgia, but it's quite tiring to keep it up for more than about 3 sessions.
I think it's kind of like that, except it's more about it's hard to keep thinking of nonsense all the time, session after session. Right. But exactly what you say, it's the same kind of concept that it's quite simple, and that simplicity has a time, not a timeline. What's the word?
Longevity.
Half-life. Yeah. Where if you're not careful, it will outstay its welcome, and you will end up not enjoying it.
I suppose it's like the Indiana Jones reference there is quite good there, actually. That's why Indiana Jones 1, 2, and 3 are good, and Crystal Skull is rubbish.
Yeah, because it's got spaceships in it. Can't have spaceships.
Yeah, but it's that longevity. It gets quite hard to stretch it out over too long a period.
Yeah, it's exactly that. But as a short, sharp kind of, we call them palate cleansers in our group, don't we? That they really just give you a complete break from months and months of adventuring and being the hero and being really wound up in the rules and somebody's reading spell books and this and that the next thing, and then suddenly you're stealing a tank with a massive drill on the front and digging a hole with it. It's just different. It's refreshing.
I've just got the image now of the live the 18 film now, with where they drop a tank out of a plane and steer it firing a gun.
That
I love perfect.
That is another example of how Achtung Cthulhu should be played.
Yeah, exactly.
I
love that.
Is it Kelly's Heroes when you've got Donna Sutherland driving the tank around, and he's got the hippie, the negative waves, man, right? Yeah. Hey, he would fit into an Achtung Cthulhu game like a glove, right? A little Sherman tank with big speakers on it, playing Rammstein, riding across the plain, right? That is it. You've got it. Bang on. Firing the gun as you're falling out in a parachute. That's even better.
That sounds fun.
It's very good.
Okay.
Right then, folks, I think that's all we have time for. So thank you very much for listening. We have been Polyhedra and Collider. Please give us a review on iTunes or your podcast platform of choice, and don't forget to share us, like us, subscribe to us, comment on our posts, because that all feeds the algorithm and gets us noticed. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, Threads, and the Board Game Geek Guild 2726. Don't forget to go to Yonder and check out the bargains. Until next time, happy gaming.
Ta-ra.
Cheerio.
Bye-bye.